let's rank the palettes I tried in June. Now, there are some palettes here that I have not done a dedicated video on, but I wanted to throw them into a palette ranking so I could talk about my thoughts on them. I also featured a couple of these only once or twice in a video, but not in a dedicated video. And I'll be showing you a look with two of the palettes that I have not talked about on my channel. And actually one of them I featured very briefly in like a get ready with me, I believe. So let's get right into it. And I remember to keep all my swatch footage as well as do swatch footage for the other palettes. So I'm going to be popping that up as I'm talking through them. So in the last place is the Sweet Aesthetics palette from Dede Signature. This one was sent to me and I am affiliated with the brand. And this is basically like a very colorful all matte eyeshadow palette, and they did say that this is a better new matte formula, and I can definitely tell that there is a difference. However, it is just not really something I gravitate towards. I just think I generally speaking gravitate towards some of these other palettes that are a little bit higher up. I feel like this palette is more of like a mid-tone rainbow palette, so there's some deepening up shades missing in here. Of course, it is a somewhat smaller, more concise palette. I also was really confused by the shade in here. I just felt like this could have been something else to balance this out a little bit more. So that's really the main reason why this is so low on the ranking. It is not a horrible palette by any means, just not my preference. So in 5th place is the Eam, what is this called? Artistry palette. This is an all matte palette as well, but this is a neutral palette, and this one I featured along with the Queen Cosmetics Multichromes a few weeks ago. And then there was another video I believe I used this in that I can't remember. Oh, I think it was with the ShineBySD Sparkle Lights single eyeshadow. So I have been trying this palette out all month, and I've been also using it off camera so I could really gather my thoughts on it. And I think my thoughts are definitely like, I don't think this is worth the money by any means or any stretch of the imagination for me personally, and what I consider to be worth it for a price. This palette, I believe, is almost like $100 or something within that range, and I think that's just a lot, even though I do understand this is a makeup artist brand and I'm sure this is very high quality. I just think for me personally, there are matte eyeshadow formulas that I much prefer to this one. I actually did a video of my top 3 matte formulas, so I will link it down in the description box in case you're curious what my top matte formulas are, but this is just not quite there. I mentioned in a video that I think this matte formula reminds me of the Hindash palettes, the Monochrome mattes and the Beaute palettes, where it's a very hard press, which is nice. You don't get a lot of kick up, but it is definitely more pigmented. And while I love those two palettes, I feel like I'm all set with having those two palettes. Like, I don't think I need both of the palettes with a similar formula, because if I want a buildable formula, I will reach for those palettes, and when I want a more pigmented formula, I reach for some other palettes such as Blend Money and Viseart. So overall, this is why it's ranking a little bit lower. I would definitely reach for this one a lot more than the other one, because these are just kind of colors and neutrals that I am more likely to use on a day-to-day basis. Also, I like that they are organized from light to dark. So in 3rd place is also a palette that I did not do a dedicated video on, but I featured it. I've actually had this palette for a couple of months, and I kind of reach for it here and there. I've just been really trying to get used to it because it is a face and eye palette together, and there's 2 different formulas in here, and that is the Danessa Myricks Groundwork Blooming Romance palette. I do not have the original one, which is different tones of brown, so this one is definitely a little bit more peachy, pinky, mauvey, just everything together. So the larger pan is like a cream to powder, and then the smaller pan is a regular powder matte formula. And I was very intrigued to try these because I really wanted to see if this cream to powder was in any way similar to the Natasha Denona cream to powder. I definitely think that they are quite similar. So the bigger pans are meant for you to use on the cheeks as well. Personally, I don't really see a shade in here. Maybe these 2 shades I can see myself really using on the cheeks, but I just feel like I don't feel the gravitational pull to necessarily want to reach for the cream to powder for my cheeks. So I haven't tried that yet. I've only tried these on my eyes. So I definitely have some thoughts. I wish that this was switched because the mattes in here are way more pigmented than the cream to powder, which is generally the case even with the Natasha Denona cream to powder. It is definitely more of a buildable kind of formula. I feel like I have a little bit of trouble dipping in between these and layering them a little bit. I find that the cream to powder tends to stick down a little bit and doesn't want to budge, but it really depends. Sometimes I have the issue, sometimes not. I'm sure that eyeshadow primer has a lot to do with that, but I'm not like the biggest fan. But if you don't like kick up and you like buildable eyeshadows, you will like these. But I think it made me realize that if there's another one that comes out and maybe it's more colorful, I don't think I would go and purchase it just because I'm not fully in love, like completely in love with the formulas in here. That being said, the reason this one is higher than the Eam palette is because I really love these warmer tones in here, and I love the peachy vibes, and just in general I would gravitate towards this palette just a little bit more because of the tones in here. So in second place is actually a palette that I was not really expecting to almost sweep me on my feet a little bit, and that is the Sigma Cool Neutrals palette. I did not do a dedicated video on this. I was sent this in PR. It does come with a little brush in here as well, but I really like this color story. I like that there's some kind of grungier, warmer tones, some more mauvey tones, and then some cooler tones. I like that this is not an all gray palette like the Natasha Denona Xenon palette, for example. That being said, I think this should have been named something else because I think that naming it Cool Neutrals and then having some warmer tones in here is a little confusing and just allows for people to be like, why is this called Cool Neutrals? There's warmer tones in here. So I totally get it, even though the warmer tones in here, like for example, Superior, it's not necessarily like a warm mustard, but when placed with the true cooler tones in here, it definitely does look warmer. Now, I am not too familiar with the Sigma formula, so this is actually the second palette in a very long time that I have tried the mattes from and the shimmers as well, and I gotta say they have a very pigmented matte formula that blends and builds very nicely. These are the kind of mattes I definitely prefer over some of the other mattes that ranked lower. Now the shimmers is something from Sigma that I never really felt like very excited about, but there are some different kind of formulas and textures in here. Polished is more of like a super sparkly, like topper like shade, and then Thunder and Angel Wing are a little bit more opaque, as well as Laguna, and also Burst. Burst is kind of like more of like a standard kind of shimmer formula, so I do like that there's different kind of levels of shimmer in here, and I have been really enjoying dipping into this palette over the past month or two. Actually, I've had it since kind of around the time that they officially launched it, so I've had it for like 2 months and I've been using it kind of on and off. And then in first place, if you have been watching my videos and you know which palette this is going to be, and it is going to be absolutely no surprise to you, and that is the Longing palette from Blend Money Cosmetics. I mean, I love this color story. It is also a cooler tone palette. There's definitely some sort of like a cool tone eyeshadow wave going on in 2024. I'm curious if it's gonna like go the opposite way now in 2025. Love this color story. Again, we have light to medium to dark, some beautiful shimmers. I did, I think, 2 looks with this palette in my video. I look at it and I feel very inspired to use it. This one for sure is a contender in showing up in my top 10 palettes of 2024. I could already tell just from using it because it is the same Blend Money formula that I love. The shimmers are beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. They're not on the squishy side. I think there was like one shade that was just maybe a little bit creamier. My only criticism of this palette is that this shade and this shade look very similar once they're swatched out, and even on the lid they look very similar. So I wish Remember had more of a tone of like this, because I think that would set it apart a little bit more, and that way you could also use it with those mattes. But otherwise, really love this palette. So let me know in the comments below if you're shocked by any of these and what your favorite palettes of June are so far. New, old, doesn't matter, just let me know. And that's everything for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time.